Our experiment of running this island solely on ferries was a total disaster. The small port never supported the locals, and we had to build a bridge just to save it. But we're not leaving this place as a failed experiment. Today, we're transforming this recovering island into the most expensive, thriving resort town in Marathon Cove. We're adding more Mediterranean apartments, luxury commercial zones, and revitalizing the waterfront. My name is College Builder, your friendly college dean. Welcome to my Southern California-inspired city, Marathon Cove. This is episode 24. Let's build. To grow our island, we need to monitor our ferries and traffic. Currently, the ferries are running about half full, and traffic at our star-shaped interchange is low. As we prepare for increased traffic, let's fix this main road. It had always been a temporary setup during our testing, but now it's time to make it permanent. We are now ready to add a second row of medium-density housing. We'll make the new blocks 4 units deep, which will help us create a cohesive group of buildings. Although we are off the coast of Southern California, I think it's fitting that this little island follows a Mediterranean theme and probably established some zoning codes to ensure these buildings all looked the same. Our blocks are not perfect. Using the Move It mod, let's make some adjustments to achieve that wall-to-wall effect. We are maintaining some street parking, but not increasing it significantly. We still want this place to feel like a ferry island, even with the bridge now in place. I'm thinking of places like P-Town, for example, which isn't an island, but it does have a ferry from downtown Boston. There is very little parking in Provincetown, and the streets are quite narrow, similar to here in Descanso Bay, so I definitely prefer taking the ferry. Ideally, as our population grows, we will keep a balance between traffic on our ferries and on the highway. It would be nice to see a higher utilization rate on the 2 ferry routes. Filling in these last 2 blocks gives us a little more density and is probably all the apartments we need. It's plausible that the density is higher closer to the water, and then we can start to move away into lower density single-family houses. Let's see if we can really turn this island experiment around. So many people are moving to our island apartments that our ferry routes are at 80% capacity. The exit ramp from the bridge is at a breaking point, and many more people are using our star-shaped interchange. Let's hope this balances out, and fast. We will begin plopping European waterfront properties despite their color range. Using the Recolor mod, let's copy the theme we created in the last episode for the Descanso Bay Resort. I love the slightly darker color on the roof, which evokes Mediterranean tiles and complements the medium density assets. Let's also copy the white wall color and paste that onto the first color channel. That looks much better and feels like it fits our island vibe. Now we can copy the whole set and paste it onto each other building in this block. In our other neighborhoods, we have left the fences up, but for here on the island, let's remove them to make it look a bit different. We'll make each of these blocks 7 squares wide. The uneven number will force us to select housing assets of varying depths. The goal is to create a uniform look, but also to have variety. We will also add in some that are 5 and 2 units deep to give us a nice mix. Varying the widths also adds to the diversity of the assets. We'll continue to remove the fences, and then let's use another method with the Recolor mod. Let's copy the full color set, but then instead of pasting it onto one building at a time, we will activate the Color Painter tool. This tool mode has a radius selection option, which will allow us to select multiple houses at once to recolor. The effect is beautiful as we appear to have a Spanish colonial revival style for this little island neighborhood. Continuing with our grid, let's build the streets out, curving around our medium density area. This is not exactly grid-like, but the housing blocks are rectangles, and we will keep with our 7-unit wide dimensions. Every few blocks, the direction of the grid changes a bit. Think of it as contextual design. Descanso Bay is horseshoe-shaped. The commercial district follows the edge of the bay, wrapping around the waterfront in a semicircle. The geography of the bay serves as the guide. From there, the medium density continues to wrap around the commercial zones, creating a slightly larger horseshoe. And now, as we shift to the low-density waterfront homes, our semicircle grows even larger. The entire zoning pattern fits the environmental context of our island and its natural bay. This makes for a more interesting zoning pattern. All of this contextual design becomes clear when you zoom out for the big picture. Traffic is flowing a bit better on the bridge, and people are still moving in. Why don't we name it the Descanso Bay Bridge? That only seems fitting. And the avenue that comes off the bridge we will call the Descanso Bay Connector. Now, we have this little area between the bridge, the roundabout, and our medium-density apartments. This is a vacation island, and I think this area close to the bay would have squeezed in as many houses as it could. Real estate close to the bay and the ferries would be at a premium. So let's add in a few more blocks, even at the risk of some road noise. Sticking to our pattern, most of these blocks are 7 units wide, although we have one here that is slightly bigger and has some irregular zoning. I think that's okay. We will plop in a few slightly longer buildings to provide a bit more variety. Let's keep using the Recolor mod to bring in our Spanish Colonial Revival color palette, and then we can start deleting the fences as we did with the other blocks. The island is looking absolutely fantastic. With our island population booming, the bridge traffic is still struggling, and all vehicles must follow the same route through town. Ferry traffic has eased a bit, so we need to consider upgrading the road infrastructure to provide an additional route to and from all these new houses. Let's install a roundabout at the end of the Descanso Bay Connector, and then create a new avenue on the far side of the island. This will curve along the coast, linking up with our low-density residential areas, and eventually reach the Lighthouse Peninsula. This avenue will provide an alternate route so all vehicles don't have to pass through the downtown commercial district. Unsurprisingly, cars immediately start using this shortcut. The curving coastal avenue creates space for us to add more low-density housing blocks. We don't need to fill everything in today, but some more houses right here are the perfect addition. Looking at the traffic info view, you can see that our new road infrastructure is very necessary for redirecting traffic. It appears that the star-shaped interchange is as busy as ever, and just think, we haven't even built our downtown yet, or the community around our new university. Filling in this island grid should look familiar. We are continuing with the 7-unit wide blocks and using lot width and depth variation to make sure we have a variety of assets. This section is also more grid-like, as we are much further away from the curve of the bay, so the contextual design approach is far less noticeable, at least for now. The curve of our coastal avenue will allow us to do some other fun things. In terms of the rest of the island, I'd love to know what you think we should do. Do you want to see it densely populated, or perhaps some large mansions, or something else altogether? Share your thoughts. Whatever we do, we just need to continue monitoring the bridge traffic and see how we can push our ferry utilization to the max. We will use the zone color changer to bring in our custom Spanish Colonial Revival palette. To mix things up, we will also add in a few color varieties to the roofs, making some a bit darker and some a bit lighter. And finally, we will delete our fences as we did on the other houses. Our infrastructure expansion and residential build-out is complete. We've definitely saved the island and made something beautiful. And we have over 5,500 residents. Although it's a small island, it's become a sizable community. Let's now turn to our special custom parks. These triangle-shaped gaps in our grid are the perfect spots for parks, and it feels appropriate that a vacation resort island should have lots of recreational facilities. Let's start with the circular park, making sure it has a road connection, and then, with Anarchy On, we will connect up several pedestrian pathways to make it feel integrated into the space. We'll replace the default trees with palm trees so it captures our Southern California theme. And then, with a better bulldozer mod, we will delete the default grass texture. I love the terrain surfaces pack from Gaga XM, as these grass and flower surfaces feel richer and more three-dimensional. These are so easy to use, creating abstract shapes and layering them over one another to make a natural-looking park surface. We can then scatter some wild shrubs and bushes, creating an area that looks natural and unmanicured. As a resort island, we should have lots of tennis courts and other exercise amenities for our visitors. This next part of the park will have a tennis complex. We will extend the pedestrian paths through the area, providing lots of walking spaces. From the prop menu, we can add a fountain. This one has a Spanish colonial feel and is perfect for the area. Let's create more of the grassy spaces, which help the different sections feel like they belong together. And finally, we will use the brick surface from the German surfaces pack, both around the fountain and at the other end of the block. The brick really enhances the feel. We can place a few props, planters, and trees to make this pedestrian friendly. We just want to get the palm trees in the middle of our planters. I like to then draw out some of the flower overlays to give the grass a bit of a wild feel. Randomly placed shrubs help with that vibe also. Think back several episodes to when we created the chaparral shrubland biome. Let's add grass to the roads around the park. Placing palm trees using Anarchy and the advanced line tool keep everything from looking barren. We can also place palm trees using the Snap to Road feature, although they don't really rotate randomly, so this is not my favorite approach. I don't know how you feel, but the bright orange clay quartz are standing out a bit too brightly. Let's use the blue decals from Sully and overlay them. It's purely decorative, but the blue is just so much more subtle. Returning to the circle park, let's replace the sand surfaces with our red brick. This also helps connect the two parts of the park, creating an impression that it is one larger complex divided by the road. In the open spaces, like where we have the brick, let's place some invisible paths. This will allow pedestrians to wander through the area, making them look used. Our first custom park turned out beautifully. For the second, let's build a public swimming pool. Although beaches are nearby, it feels like a resort island would have a large public pool. And this time, we will create a basketball complex. As we did with the tennis courts, let's use one of Sully's decals, creating a slightly different look from the base game defaults. The blue and green is just so much more subtle. Continuing with our theme, let's draw in some red brick surfaces, pedestrian paths, and some invisible paths. Although, after seeing it, I'm not sure I like this path right in the middle. It doesn't make any sense to me, so let's place a small playground instead. Let's add grass to the surrounding sidewalks, and then, using the planter props, create some custom circle planters. This is just a nice way to do something a bit different. We can do a few of these and then add palm trees to the middle of each one. One more will complete this brick area, and then we can place some benches in the gaps and perhaps a few trash cans. Around the playground, we'll layer in some of Gaga XM's terrain surfaces. And of course, we need some wild shrubs. At the other end of the park, by the pool, we can create a few more of the circular planters. These turned out very nicely. And with that, I think our second triangular-shaped park is complete. Let's now turn to the central park of Descanso Bay that we built in a previous episode. Half the park is surrounded by medium-density residential, but on this end, we placed a fire station and a few parks. Let's move the dog park and delete this other brightly colored playground. We can replace it with a smaller park and an outdoor fitness area. I think the central park will just look better if it has more medium-density residential around it. So let's create a few apartment blocks on each side of the fire station. But the Mediterranean apartments just don't fit with the Eastern European fire station, so let's delete that and use the small French firehouse instead. This at least has the red tile roof, so it blends better with our Spanish colonial architectural vibes. We'll straighten out our surfaces so that the little gaps are filled in, and now I think the central park looks so much better. You can see, however, that with 3 sides occupied by apartments, the 4th side with our school looks a bit empty. You might as well make it complete, filling in the space on either side of the elementary school with a set of apartments. Because the lots are irregular, we just need to use the movement mod to move them together. And now our central park is fully surrounded, and I think that looks lovely. We have one more triangle-shaped space near the bridge, which makes for another great custom park. For this one, let's start with the pedestrian paths rather than a park asset to define the space. This won't give us any in-game recreation value, but it will enhance the area's aesthetics. The German brick surface in the middle, surrounding a fountain, creates a focal point, and then the Gaga XM surface creates the grass. Let's really layer them in. Altogether, the grass looks beautiful and complex when done this way. To be extra dramatic, we will create a formal ring of flowers in this park, but then we will continue to add randomly placed wildflowers all around. This park is a mix of cultivated and natural, and I think that mimics many parks in real life. For maintenance workers, it probably helps reduce the upkeep and care, but it still allows for lots of beauty. We will top it off with some palm trees scattered around. Let's upgrade the surrounding streets with grass along the sidewalks and then add palms using the Snap to Roads feature. This little park turned out to be one of my favorites. With the custom parks complete, I think it makes sense to fill in some of these gaps between the grid and the connector with more low-density residential. Not all houses need to be in an enclosed block. In fact, just by filling in these edges with homes, we will help to make the grid lines look less jarring and make the residential build look a little more organic. Of course, we now have low-density houses very close to the bridge and highway road, which risks generating too much noise pollution. But I think we will try it out and see how it goes. We are going to leave a gap, so hopefully that gives us enough room. Let's do a bit of recolor on these new buildings. Zooming out, I think these streets will look better if we add more grass to them. It just gives it a more residential feel. And with that, I think the residential expansion for today is complete. Now we can turn to the waterfront, including our coastal avenue. Since this is a resort island, it would not be complete without some beaches. For this, we will use Sully's Golden Sand textures. If you have not used them before, there are differing shades of dark and light for wetter or drier sand. There are also sand textures that have grass peeking through. These can be layered on top of each other to add rich depth to your beach. As you can see, some go on top and others always go underneath, so you want to make sure you place them down in the right order to get the look you want. We'll start with the light grass up close to the parking road. This will be covered over by the sand, so we need to place it first. Then we will place the light dry sand, making sure we overlap the grass by just a little bit. Just make sure there are not any gaps and do not fully cover the grassy sand or you won't be able to see it. Next, we will use the wet light sand, which might be in that in-between state. It's been wet, but perhaps is starting to get dry. Finally, we will use the wet dark sand. This should be closest to the water, and in fact, it is good to have it go under the water. Now it's time to place some sand decals, also by Sully. The decals help blend the lines between the different layers, making it appear as though everything is seamless. There is not one right way to do this. Just try some of the different decals until you get the result you want. One of the hardest parts is to use decals to blend the underwater portions. I like to use one of the larger decals with the line tool, adjusting the spacing and offset variation to create randomness and blend in that sharp line. We want this to be a protected beach, less susceptible to the surf and blocked off from all the boats. To do this, we will take the solid concrete leisure pier and create some breakwaters. You will see structures like these around some beaches, and they also help reduce the amount of erosion. We'll place some boulders along one side of each pier, creating a mix of man-made structure with the natural elements. Now it's time to create another commercial area, continuing with the European waterfront assets. Let's imagine lots of bars, restaurants, and tourist shops along the parking road here, providing a place for our beachgoers to stop in and cool off. The pedestrian paths provide good connectivity and a way for people in the residential area to cut through. We can also extend some of the surfaces to cover up those awkward areas. I just love these waterfront commercial buildings. They are the perfect addition to an island resort and beach town. We'll do a bit more detailing around these buildings, extending the surfaces to fill the area, but we don't want to cover all the grass. The shrubs and wildflowers will help fill in some of the gaps, giving it a wild, beachy look. It would be great if we had some tall beachfront grasses, the kind you see on sand dunes and along the coast. Maybe also some scraggly trees that live in grassy areas. Hopefully, those are in our future. For now, we will take what we have, and, to be honest, this little beach in the commercial block is looking incredible. We should also complete the beach with some props. I like putting out the umbrellas in small clusters and spreading them up and down. One big thing I think we are missing in the game are beach animations for our citizens. I wish the beaches attracted people like parks did, and I wish we could have people laying out on the beach. Again, perhaps something we could see in a future Parks and Outdoor DLC. For now, the static props help the beach come to life. We will also add some lounge chairs to complete the look. And then, finally, let's scatter some palm trees along the edge of the beach in the grassy area. I've said over and over that this is a resort island, but I think so far we've only placed one hotel. Over here along the beach is another perfect place to put a hotel. We have limited assets when it comes to Spanish colonial revival hotels, but this one will do if we recolor it. It really looks more like a New England style to me. Next, we'll fill in the boulders on our second breakwater so that the two sides of the beach complement one another. We also have some open space by the hotel, so let's create a few more pedestrian paths. It seems like there's room to squeeze in a few more waterfront commercial buildings, including a few more restaurants and shops for our beachgoers. I've never used parking avenues before, so hopefully these spots don't create unnecessary traffic. All of these commercial properties will get the recolor treatment to our Spanish colonial color scheme. Hopefully, we are not being overly repetitive with the colors. If you think so, let me know. In this last block, we need to do some detailing, extending out the surfaces to hide unnecessary gaps. There are probably spots that would not have been left bare. Around the hotel, we will use the Gaga XM surfaces to enhance the terrain. By leaving this grass open, we keep the hotel set back from the noisy bars and shops. And of course, this area should have some shrubs, flowers, and palm trees. Just imagine a tranquil morning coffee, sitting at the hotel, and getting ready to head to the beach. I am loving how this entire commercial and beach district has turned out. I think it has far exceeded my expectations. For those eagle-eyed viewers, you probably noticed we have one more triangular-shaped block that we overlooked. In keeping with the pattern, let's also make this a park, but make it different from the others. Taking these two pocket parks, we will remove the default base texture and replace them with our red brick. Using the same brick, let's create our own paths to the sidewalk and connect between them. Finally, we will use the invisible pedestrian paths to link them together and create our own custom routes through which citizens can wander. The terrain surfaces makes the grass pop, and a little fountain feels like the perfect touch. Our island getaway is incredible, but we have a bit more to do. Our harbor is looking a bit empty with only the ferry pier. We can change this to make it bustling and really come alive. Let's start by adding a variety of key wall, wooden, and concrete piers. We want this to feel like it is developed over time and was not necessarily planned out. They are going to be different widths, different shapes, and different sizes. Some of these might be city-owned, like the ferry pier, but many of these are probably privately owned, hence the variety. When you build them, they are not always level, so we will use the Move It mod to select the nodes and then use Ctrl-H to even them out. I have been very dissatisfied with the anchor plaza that we built in the corner. It feels oddly placed, so why don't we redo this little spot? We will move the Bait and Bistro restaurant to the end of the island so that we can open up this area. The restaurant will need some key walls in its new location and to feel like it fits into the development. If you come here to eat, you are definitely going to have some amazing views of the harbor. After we even out the key walls, we can then smooth out the land to make our terraforming blend in. If you have other ideas for the end of this area, let me know. Back to our anchor plaza, we will remove the remaining items so we can start this over. First, the terrain needs to be even. That will help with the placement of the anchor decal. Next, let's place it more centrally in the bend so it doesn't feel like an afterthought. Then, let's use some of the tile surfaces to create walkways to the plaza from all directions. This will make it feel more like a true must-see destination for visitors to the island. Everyone will want to have a selfie here for their Instagram. Invisible pedestrian pathways will allow our citizens to move through the area. In the larger gaps, let's add some fun waterfront commercial buildings and recolor them with our theme colors. This makes everything feel like it fits. We can add a custom grass surface here to make it look a bit different from the terrain. However, it overlays our parking surfaces, so we will need to adjust it to fit correctly. It doesn't take long for pedestrians to start using these paths as a cut-through, making the area feel like a prominent public space. Now, let's just continue the detailing, adding a series of fountains and some grass and flower overlays to make the landscape look more complex. Using the Advanced Line tool, we will create a circle of bushes and flowers around our plaza, and then line each of the paths coming into it. Let's delete any of the extras that are in the way of the sidewalks. This is a manicured plaza, but we have placed the bushes and flowers so as not to be perfectly in a row. What do you think of this approach? Finally, some palm trees will wrap things up. I would love to come visit this plaza. Now we can start to add the life to the harbor by placing boat assets. We will use ferry props as well as the small yacht and sailing boat. Mixing in some of the fishing props also adds variety, especially when you are looking at it from a distance. Although we have not created a fishing industry, I think the island would naturally attract fishing vessels to help feed the island population. We want boats all along the harbor's quay wall and then up and down all the smaller piers. We can then move out into the open water, filling in our little island harbor. This makes the place look quite active, as long as we carefully avoid the ferry routes. While we are detailing the water, let's return to our beach and place some of the wave decals. The beach is protected, but I imagine it would still have some waves. Since we have done so much in Descanso Bay this episode around the harbor, we might as well finish off this little peninsula. Let's leave some of it as the natural scrub brush. But then, right before the lighthouse, let's add the Eastern European hotel, which actually has a look that fits well in this area. Once the dirt road is back in place, we can add another restaurant and then place some new pedestrian paths to link the waterfront to the lighthouse. We're really just making this end of the harbor feel like a historic part of the island. The lighthouse was probably here long before Descanso Bay grew so large. Remember, this point stands right in front of the major shipping route. So, this little peninsula is important. With that in mind, perhaps the community added the quay wall to protect this side from storm erosion. Even if the lighthouse is less important now due to modern technology, once upon a time they would have done everything they could to protect it. This breakwater at the end is an additional protection, and then we can fill in some boulders to further support the shoreline. We are nearing 25,000 citizens in Marathon Cove, with well over 5,000 of those on our island. Descanso Bay has become a truly important part of our region. I need your ideas on how we should complete it while keeping the ferries critical to transportation. Utilization of our two routes has been hovering close to 80%, and traffic on the bridge and star-shaped interchange remains high. I really love how bustling our harbor looks. Citizens are walking all along the waterfront, exactly like we would expect on a resort island serviced by ferries. If anything in today's build inspired you, please consider subscribing and hitting the notification button so you can stay up to date on future videos. Thanks for watching.